Kלים Perik Beis Mishnah Zayin. Hatmein shebechli cheres. This Mishnah is in contrast to Mishnah Gimel, where it listed the Tochorin shebechli cheres. And now we're talking about the Tmeim. Tavlosh yeshlo lasbis. We have a tray with a rim with an edge. And of course it has now a toich. Says the Chazon Ish explaining that although the item you carry on the tray may not actually reach the sides, but still the point of the sides is to contain the item in the tray so that it doesn't fall off, and therefore that's enough. That's called a toich a'oseh lekabel. Machta shleima, a little shovel, as opposed to the machta prutza which we had in Mishnah Gimel. This is a shovel with all four rims, all four directions have a small wall. Therefore it's a kli cheres yesh letoich. Now comes the interesting part of the Mishnah, the difficult part of the Mishnah. V'tavlosh yimlea ka'oros. This is a tray, and the tray is made of little compartments, all one kli out of cheres. For instance, it would be something one would put on the table to serve nuts and raisins, and lots of little dishes, all formed out of one dish. Nitmeis achas men b'sheretz loy nitmeu kulam. Because kli cheres is a din of toich, although it's one kli, because this kli cheres has lots of separate toichos, if a sheretz falls into one of those compartments, then it's only that compartment becomes tomei, and the rest are toir, because all the rest of the kli have their own identity, their own toich, and one toich cannot be metame another toich. However, in yeshlo lasbiz oidif, if there is a ridge higher than the individual toiches, which encompasses the whole kli, nitmo achas mehem nitmu ukulam. Even if just one base kibble becomes tomei, they all become tomei. And it's not peshat because the sheretz, the dov hamatame, went through, on its way down, went through the top ridge. Because even if the sheretz went into the kli when it was alive and died later, it's the fact that there is one lisbas which covers all the toichs, makes the whole kli one kli, and makes the whole toich one toich, and we don't have our separate toiches. And b'chein based havlin shel cheres, the same rule applies to a sort of dish, again used for different spices out of cheres. The kalmarim hamtu omois. This is a little box used by scribes, by soifrim, into one little receptacle they put the ink, another one they put the pen, maybe the rubber. And again, it's the same thing. Each toich has its own separate identity, and with kli cheres, it's the toich that brings the tumah. And where the tumah comes through the toich, if the sheretz is only metami one of those toiches, the other toiches are left intact. Because as far as the other toiches is concerned, you can actually regard the toich into which the sheretz fell as the gav, as the outside of the kli cheres, and the kli cheres cannot pick up tumah from its outside. Now moving on to something else. What about if the same scenario, a box, a dish with lots of compartments, was made out of wood? Now when we're dealing with a metame de'oraisa, for instance a sheretz, as far as eitz is concerned, the base kibble isn't the way through which the kli eitz is mekabel tumah. With kli cheres, it's mekabel tumah through its toich. So when you have separate toiches, each toich picks up the tumah and doesn't pass on to the other toich. But when you have a kli eitz, the base kibble is just a tanai in the kabbalas tumah. It doesn't make a difference if it has one base kibble or five botei kibble. It's one kli, which is mekabel tumah, and therefore, if you have a kli shel eitz with the same arrangement, lots of different compartments, and the sheretz touches one of them, it doesn't make a difference, because here the sheretz doesn't have to touch the inside; he can even touch the outside, and therefore it's davar poshut with a kli eitz, and the sheretz touches such a kli eitz, the whole kli eitz becomes tomei. But now we're going to deal with tumas mashkin, which we've dealt with before. I just recap the yesodis here. A kli eitz, the lowest it can become on the rung and the ladder of kabbalas tumah is a rishon. Oichlin and mashkin, the highest they can be, is also rishon. And therefore, by definition, an oichel mashke midiraisa can never be makabel, can never be metame a kli. However, there is one type of mashkin called mayonos shelzov, which are an av hatuma, and they are able to be metame a kli. And therefore, Chazal would goza that all mashkim tmeim, even if they're not an av hatuma, can be metame a kli. But in order to recognize the fact that this tumah is only a tumah drabanan, they made a very big kula, which is, if the mashkin hit the kli from the inside, then the normal rules apply, the whole kli becomes tummy. But where the mashkin are only nogea, on the outside of the kli eitz, then it's only the achoirov, it's only the outside of the kli eitz which becomes tummy, the inside, the toich, remaining tor. With such tumas mashkin, we can apply the same svaras that we used for kli cheres, that if you have a kli eitz which is made up of separate compartments, so looking at each compartment on its own, that's the toich. And when you're dealing with that toich, all the other toichos are actually called achirayim legabi that toich. So if the mashkin were to touch an individual toich, as far as the other toichos is concerned, that toich is called an achirayim. And therefore, if the mashkin tmeim fall into toich A, as far as toich B and toich C and toich D are concerned, toich A is called an achirayim. And therefore, only toich A remains tomei al din al chiraim. But as far as toich B and C and D are concerned, the mashkin didn't fall into their toich, because for tumas mashkin we are concerned with the chiluk of a chiraim v'toich as we are in kli cheres, and therefore it mirrors the rules of kli cheres that when a mashkin falls in based tablet shel eitz shenitmo echad b'mashke, says the Mishnah, whether one of the compartments gets tummy with a mashke, so the gabi the other toiches is called an achiraim. Lo nitmo chaveiroi, only that compartment remains tummy but materes gav. This is explained in detail in Chazon Ish, and especially in the Hosofos to the Stipler to the Kiddush Yaakov. Now we're dealing with this kli eitz with lots of compartments, which mashkim have been metame, and we said that if it's metame one base kibble, it's only that base kibble that became tummy. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer cholkin es ovyo. What about the thickness of the wall between the two bote kibble? So base kibble A is tummy, base kibble B is tor, but base kibble goes like this, and then at the top there's a small ridge, there's a thickness of the wall itself. What's the din of that wall? Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Hamashamesh l'tomei tomei, Hamashamesh l'tor tor. You split it in two. Half the thickness, which is nearer the tomei section, is tomei, and the other half is tor. And the Mefarshim explain there's a difference in the opinion of the Mefarshim here, but it seems the way this is the way the Chazon Ish learns, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is only saying a kula in the case of Tumas Mashkin. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri would be moida in the case of the ratio dealing with the kli cheres and sheretz, where we're dealing with tumah d'oraisa. We will not say the kula of cholkin is ovyoi. The whole ovyoi we would be machmir and say it belongs to the toich which became tummy. And who are doing the chachamim who argue Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri won't say the kula even in Tumas Mashkim. They also hold that the whole ovyoi you go l'chumra. You go l'chumra. And the Mishnah ends off with the din we've had at the beginning of the Mishnah with Klicheres, quite a simple din. Im yesh le'lazbiz oidef, if this kli eitz has got an overriding ridge which is higher than all the other bati kibble, then all becomes one, even for Tumas Mashkin, where normally we would be concerned between chilukim of toich and achiraim, but since it's got a lizbeis echod, which is oidef, then nitmo echod mehem, nitmo chavera, then all the bati kibble, including the lizbeis, is all called one big toich, and the only achiraim we will have in this case, of course, is the real outside of the kli, but in this case, if nitmo echod mehem, nitmo chavera.